Hey there, welcome to East and West. Let's talk about The Great Hypnotist. Released in April 2014, this is a Chinese thriller that also has a few mystery elements thrown in for good measure. The film is about a renowned psychologist who specializes in using hypnotherapy to treat his patients. Then one day, one of his old teachers asks him to take on a peculiar case of a woman who has been having visions of ghosts. He takes the case, he starts using hypnosis, and that's when things start getting weird. Now, the first thing a lot of you probably thought about when you heard having visions of ghosts was, I
see dead people.
And don't worry, the movie recognizes it too.
听说过阴阳眼吗？
Told you. Now, being a film about ghosts, you might expect some of the scenes to take on a bit of a scary vibe. And they do, to what I would say is moderate success. I mean, it's definitely creepy in a few places, and frankly, the whole opening looks like something that you might find in a horror film. But even though there's definitely sections where it's very clearly trying to scare you, it's just not scary. And if you can't get me scared, then you're doing something wrong. Now, aside from ghosts, the other main part of the film is to do with the hypnosis side of things. Now, being released 4 years later, I think it would be relatively fair to say that this film has taken more than a few cues from another film that came out that dealt with diving into the subconscious. I wouldn't call it a ripoff, though, okay? Yes, it is using similar components like the whole world landscapes inside the mind, but it's very clearly doing its own thing with that concept. In fact, there's actually a number of shots in this movie that I would say might even rival the scenes in Inception. Providing, of course, you can actually see it, because this film really likes its shaky cam. Now, something I really like about this film is the way it goes about explaining, and sometimes visually explaining, certain concepts that some people might not be familiar with. It's the sort of concepts like how you can actually go about remembering things that didn't actually happen, and sort of like how different forms of hypnosis work. The one they most focus on in this film is the concept of waking hypnosis. And instead of just telling you the theory behind it, they actually let you see it in action at various points by basically just showing you, okay, this is what happens, and they let you figure it out from there, which I think is a really good way of doing these things. Now, I haven't actually studied hypnosis, so I can't tell you about the accuracy or the viability of half the things they say, but I can say that it is presented in a way that definitely makes sense. Which is a lot more than I can say about how the film presents its story. Now, keep in mind, this is a film about going into somebody's mind to try and find ghosts, so you might expect that at some points it might get a little bit confusing. And it does get confusing. It gets really confusing. In fact, it gets so confusing, it actually starts getting irritating in how little sense it's making. And it all starts the moment he meets his new patient. He doesn't even start hypnotizing yet. He just meets her, and that is when things start getting very questionably weird. And it's not even weird in the case of, oh, what's going on? What's that? What's happening? It's weird in the case of, yeah, okay, I am so totally lost right now. And it's one of those things that just breaks any immersion you had while watching this movie. And the entirety of the middle section of the movie is like this. What the film is trying to do is give you the sense that something is very wrong here. But it is so unbelievably obvious that something is wrong that it only ends up working to the film's detriment. You can't actually enjoy the film because you're too busy trying to figure out what it is that's actually happening. That, and one other thing. Okay, so it's the first time I'm watching this movie, right? I'm sitting there, film's playing, it's got a good setup, it's got an interesting premise, everything's going great. And then something happens that completely breaks any immersion I had. And then just like that, any build-up, any excitement that I was feeling immediately went away. Because there is one scene in this movie, and in particular one detail within that scene, that the moment I first saw it, completely and utterly ruined any immersion I had in this film. In fact, it's actually incredible how fast it broke. I'm going to play you the scene in question right now. See if you can spot where it went wrong.
放心吧，我会有分寸的。打扰了啊，再见。
Did you see it? Let me play it again. Right there. Okay, right there. That edited in circling of that word on the page. I don't even know what that's saying, okay? I don't actually read Chinese, but I don't need to know. I saw this the very first time I watched this movie, okay? And that moment alone almost ruined the complete rest of the film for me. Let me explain why. Now, from what I can figure, that circling was probably supposed to be a creepy background event, okay? It's not something you were meant to consciously supposed to notice. I suspect that after they tried looking up bits of hypnosis, they decided to try using sort of like a subconscious scare tactic, alright? To make the movie seem a bit creepier and to fit in with the whole ghost theme. And the reason I'm thinking that is because I've also managed to notice 2 other times in the movie where something similar is going on. Namely, this thing moving behind a chair, and whatever the heck this thing is floating in the background. Now, I don't know if I saw all the ones in this film, and if there's any other ones I missed, then congratulations, filmmakers, you did your job well on those ones. That is what these other 3 should have been doing. What they should not be doing is distracting me from watching the rest of the film because it is so obvious that something wrong is happening. And when you combine those events with just how completely nonsensical some of the scenes in this movie are, as the movie went on, I suddenly realized I hadn't actually been watching this movie. Instead, what I had been doing is been taking mental notes of any tiny little thing that was making me question something in this movie. And they were just the most pointless and minute details and nitpicks that had absolutely no bearing on anything to do with the plot. But that's what I was focusing on, probably because it was actually easier to comprehend and understand than anything else in this movie. And again, they are the most tiny details, okay? These are things like, why would a psychologist have a room that looks like this? What's up with the size of these marbles? Why is there rock music playing during this scene? How did an old lady hide something in this air vent? How did they get this effect? And for the record, I actually do want to know that because the effects in this film are awesome to look at. But let's get back to the rant. Who would build a door that looks like this? What's the point of these Escher buildings? Why on earth would you have glasses like that? Why, pray tell, does this word get magically circled? I'm sorry, I'm still on that, okay? It really bugs me. And to top it all off, the comparisons to The Sixth Sense don't just stop at seeing ghosts, because this film has a twist ending to it. And while that might sound like mild spoilers, it's kind of let down by the fact that, as previously mentioned, nothing in the center of this film makes any sense! Which means that, by the end of this movie, either there's going to be a twist ending that explains everything, or they're just going to leave everybody in the dark and never make anything clear. And I'm going to be honest, they should have taken that second option. And the reason I say that is because, just due to the sheer amount of stuff that's in this film, it means that the reveal scene in this movie requires 10 minutes worth of screen time to explain everything that happened. And if that wasn't enough, there is a twist ending to the twist ending, which in and of itself requires another 5 minutes worth of screen time. Now, I will give the film this, okay? The twist that they give is not half-baked, okay? It's a legitimate twist, and they go into very great detail about how every single thing that happened actually manages to fit in together. But the problem is, by the end of this film, I was just so confused about what was going on, I didn't care. I stand by what I said before, okay? If they had stopped this film right before the reveal scenes took place, that would have been a much better ending, alright? Because it means the film would have ended on such an open note and such a confusing storyline that you would have to be going back and thinking about and then actually trying to figure it out yourself what was going on, which would have made the film just seem so much stronger. Especially because even though the explanation they give, it does make sense, it still doesn't explain like half the things that happen in this film. I rewatched this film a second time, alright? And even though I was there going, oh, okay, that's what that scene's hinting at, and oh, alright, that's what's going on in that scene, there was still plenty of moments where I was just sitting back and thinking to myself, yeah, okay, even with everything I know, that still doesn't make sense. I really wanted to give this film an absolutely glowing recommendation, okay? And in some ways, I still do recommend this film. There are good things here, okay? It's an interesting story, it's told in a very interesting way. And when you can actually understand what's going on, alright? When it's just the two main characters in a room just conversing with each other, there's sort of like a battle of wits thing that's happening between the two of them that's absolutely fascinating to watch. but it just doesn't have enough of those good moments to really pull back the attention that it can lose. All in all, this is definitely an ambitious film, but I think that might be part of the problem. It's trying to get across a lot of really complex ideas, but it doesn't do enough to keep those ideas grounded. However, I'm still going to give this film a tentative recommendation. If you like mystery films or really grand visual styles, or you're just really good at not nitpicking movies, there should actually be enough here to give you a good, enjoyable film. To everyone else, you could still watch it, just try not to think too deeply about what's going on. I give this film 6 marbles and 5 pocket watches. So that was my review of The Great Hypnotist. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching. Till next time.